All right. Good evening. Good evening and welcome to the show. I'm Gil Contreras. I'm still a bad hombre, and this is Ride Along Radio. Sitting to my right, as you see, I'm sitting in George's spot, and George is he's going to be calling in a little bit. He is at a undisclosed location doing things we can't talk about. I mean, we could tell you, but then we'd have to kill you. So George will be joining us later by telephone. And also veteran news guy and my good friend and mentor, David Cruz, who, if you're here from locally from Los Angeles, you remember David from KMBC News here in Los Angeles, the local affiliate. And I met David when we were covering the North Hollywood shootout when I was doing public radio here in Los Angeles. And David and I did a special show on that. And that's how we met, and we've been friends ever since. And I've been fortunate to have him as a personal friend and mentor, and he's become a friend to the Ride Along Radio show. So we'll be having all of that coming up in just a little bit. But sitting to my right is the guy who started it all with us. You know, we can only call him by Kent Lee. We don't really know his origin. We don't know what agency he worked for or currently works for. We can't confirm or deny any of that. But Kent Lee, welcome back to the show.
Hey, it's really good to be here. I understand that you're going to feel a little bit lonely tonight, and you needed some conflict on the show.
I needed backup. You know, I needed a little bit of backup. But actually, you know what? We have a whole lot of things to talk about. And tonight we're going to be talking, in general, we're going to talk about the election. When we did last week's show, I told George, we talked about it on the show before we wrapped it up, and we said, wow, when we do the show next week, there'll be a brand new president-elect. And George is just, he was just so smug.
He had to go to the hospital.
He was just so smug. No, last week.
Before the election.
Yeah, before the election. He's just so smug. He reminded me of my sister, the Monday morning quarterback, Trish. You know, they're just so smug. Oh, Hillary, all the polls. Yeah, and they were all wrong. And so that's we're going to talk about that. Later in the show, we're going to talk about some of these propositions that passed in California. The voters of California they're just amazing to me. Just, any kind of tax you can think of, the California voters will pass it, especially if they believe that someone else will have to pay for it.
That's right.
They'll pass anything, any kind of tax, bond, whatever. As long as you fool them into thinking it won't cost them anything and they don't have to pay it, they're happy to pass those.
And they want to secede now, right?
Well, apparently. We'll get to the secession part later when we have David. That's one of the things I want to raise with him. So we're going to talk about some of those propositions. It's going to be legal to smoke marijuana, apparently, in California for recreational use. Well, it was that sham 215, Prop 215, the promise, the infamous 215 card. So if you had a bad back or, you wanted to engage in some preventative cataract treatment, if you got a doctor to write you a letter, you could, go and
get your own brick,
a dispensary, and buy your own weed and whatever. So we'll talk about those things later on, and then of course Prop 57. California's just so predictable. They'll vote for higher taxes, early release of criminals from prison, the declassification of violent felonies to nonviolent, and then any tax you can think of. So I mean, it
all makes sense to me.
It's just ridiculous. It's the most the California the California electorate is the most ridiculous bunch of people I have ever seen in my life. And earlier in my life when I wasn't paying attention to the politics of I voted here and there, and I always voted in local elections and voted in most of the presidential elections, but I wasn't really plugged in. You know what I mean? I wasn't really plugged into what was going on, who the candidates were, what the real issues were. I was so busy living my life and having fun and, chasing money and whatever else I chased back in those days.
They always said pay attention to the local, stuff. That's going to affect you more than anything.
Yeah.
And I always had such a deep interest in the national perspective of politics. Every time I would look at ballots and delve into the propositions and everything else, I would get so rattled by what I was reading, my head would hurt so bad that I'd shut it off.
Right.
It's like listening to local news.
Yeah. Well, I was never a politico, so to speak. I didn't really pay that much attention, especially to national politics, until when along came Barack Obama, and in 2008 when his first run. That's when I first started paying attention, because all of a sudden there was this, African American guy that everybody was talking about. I had seen his speech at the DNC that year, and suddenly this guy was on everybody's radar screen, and I thought, wow, this guy's pretty charismatic. He's an excellent speaker. He's a great orator, and I wonder what he was about. And then the more he spoke, I got it, and then I was like, whoa,
time out.
He's a little bit scary, and so that's when I began to really pay attention, and using social media back then, because I was teaching back then. So I decided, as we got closer to that election, I decided, I'm going to use my social media to just expose this guy for who he is. And I don't think...
Did it work?
It didn't work, because the American people, or the American electorate, a good portion of the American electorate had decided in their heads that it was more important to have the first, quote, black president, close quote, than it was to actually look at both candidates and say, which one has better ideas about where this country should go?
Mm-hmm. They couldn't even listen to what he was saying.
Right.
He announced to them exactly who he was and what he was going to do.
He told us all what he wanted to do, that he wanted to fundamentally change America. And it was pretty scary stuff to me. And then a lot of the stuff he promised to do, like, closing Gitmo and stuff, I was like, okay, lefties are going to love to hear that, but you can't do it. Where are you going to put these people? So anyway, so he gets elected, in the first. So I thought, well, after his first election in 2009, when he gets inaugurated in January 2009, I thought, well, let's just see where this guy goes. And we began down what I now call the rabbit hole, the progressive rabbit hole. And so by the time 2012 came around, I was fully engaged in who this guy was, what the options are, what his agenda is, and then starting to pay attention to more global, politics and how it's affecting us. Started to pay attention to the monetary system, to the Fed, and suddenly I got scared.
and you found out that there was a whole apparatus out there that he fit into.
Absolutely.
Bet.
And it's scary. It's really scary at times. When I was teaching, I would hold my, to be talking to my students about the different policies out there in our monetary system and the Fed and, hyperinflation and the value of the dollar and holding interest rates down and purposely, quantitative easing, pushing paper money out there. I'd hold a $1 bill and a $100 bill, and I would hold them both in class, in my classroom, and I would say the only difference between this and this is an agreement that we all agree. We agree that this one is worth 100 of these. The moment that agreement is no longer valid, they're both useless pieces of paper with green ink on them.
Right.
So, anyway, that was to me the beginning of why I felt very strongly about having to pay more attention to what was happening on the political scene, because it was going to affect the country in ways that weren't going to be helpful, and and as we're coming now to the end of the second Obama administration, it's crystal clear. It's just crystal clear to me that we have been on the wrong path. These last 2 years of the last term have been especially detrimental to working class people. It's been especially detrimental to people of color. It's been especially detrimental to law enforcement, because they've pushed this false narrative about racist cops out there out of control, killing black men for no reason. I mean, it's just so.
It should be an education to everybody about what has happened and what all of this means. And frankly, this election has just informed you that there's a great amount of people who still don't understand what's happened, or they've bought into it and they can't think past this. And to me, we've dodged a bullet. Literally.
We dodged a huge bullet, because a President Hillary Clinton was going to be a continuation of the Obama administration, and a continued, pushing of his agenda, which is this kind of global, open borders, multicultural agenda to kind of
that's coming apart at the seams
Absolutely.
In Europe, who's way ahead of us.
That's right.
In this process.
That's exactly right. When you look at the videos from France, from
Germany,
from Brussels,
and Sweden.
Sweden. When you look at what's happening over there, I would look at all this, in these last couple of years, and I would go, "Oh my God." This is where they want to go. We can see that it's on fire. We can see what's happening in Greece with the monetary fund. We can see what's happening with all this influx of immigrants, especially from terror states. We see it, and that should be scary to people. And
all well planned and well orchestrated by the left.
And the political left has been able to sell this. As if you think that any of the things that I just listed off, if you think that way, you're a racist. You're a racist. You're a homophobe. You're an Islamophobe. You're every kind of phobe and ist that there is in the dictionary. And a couple of years, about a year ago, and just around the time when we started to do this radio show, I said to myself, I thought, you know what? I am not going to hold back now. There is too much at stake. I'm going to say what I want to say. I'm going to use my social media to put that message out there. And if people are offended, they're going to be offended. I really don't care anymore because there's just too much at stake. I don't have I just don't have – we don't have the luxury of sitting back and allowing the country to continue to fall down this rabbit hole. And so that's, when George asked me to do this show, it wasn't so much a political show, but it was a show about talking about these major incidents that were being mischaracterized by the mainstream media about law enforcement. And I thought, well, I do want to be a part of that. I want to be able to come in, take a look at these officer-involved shootings, and then explain to people on the air, from a police perspective, why it ended the way that it did. And in most of those cases, and George, his favorite term has become, comply now, complain later. And that's what we saw is mostly non-compliant. The call-in number, if you want to call in and join this discussion with Kent and I, is 323-293-3375, 323-293-3375. And that's the number if you want to give us a call. And I understand that we do have a caller on the line right now. So we'll go right to the phones. Caller, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is George calling from Florida. How are you?
George Holt, what's going on, brother?
Hey, man. So, I'm in my hotel here in Fort Lauderdale, and I figured I would just sit back and listen. And I got my Jack and Coke because I've been teaching with Kaz all week.
Uh-oh.
So I got my Jack in honor of Kaz and the Marine Corps birthday today. And so, I said, I'll wait. But let me address something that you said, and it's a question for both of you.
Well, we were just in our intro, George. We hadn't even really got into anything yet.
Okay, well, then I came in right in time.
Call back, George. Wait.
So listen.
Yes.
Something you just said, I want to ask you about. You said we dodged a bullet. Ken said literally.
Yes.
Because President Hillary Clinton would have been a continuation of the policies of Barack Obama, right?
That and the Supreme Court, it would have continued to erode our Second Amendment rights. It would have been the continued erosion of the United States Constitution by the political left in this country. So absolutely, I strongly believe.
And greater than that, George, let me just
that we dodged a bullet.
Let me lay on you the prospect of the violence that's going on right now and how you see it. The violence that may occur in the next 4 years may be just totally different. Totally different.
Well, I'll get back to you on that, Ken, because I want clarification on that. But here's my question to both of you. You just correctly stated that you knew what to expect from Hillary Clinton. Can you both admit that you don't know what the hell to expect from Donald Trump? Because we don't really know who Donald Trump is. Although he ran as a conservative, we know he's not a conservative.
Correct.
So we don't have a legislative record to go on with him.
That's right.
We don't have even a damn voting record to go on with him. So.
Right.
What we've done is jump into the unknown. So you say you dodged a bullet, but we may have stepped in the path of a freight train.
Right. Well, I'll let Ken answer in a second, but from my perspective, none of those things mattered because we know Hillary's record. She's got 30 years of scandals and corruption, the emails, the Clinton Foundation, all of this stuff. It's right out there. WikiLeaks put all the information out there. The DNC undercut Bernie Sanders. They try to coordinate Hillary Clinton.
The election.
Wait, let me finish. Let me just finish. And then get
I'm
to.
agreeing with you.
Then I'll get. So while all those records, voting and political record, while that's important, it doesn't seem to matter in this case because people were ready to line up behind Hillary Clinton. And every time you said, okay, well, I understand you want to vote for her, but do you understand these things about her and these things about what a continuation of the Obama agenda means to the country? And they would look at me and they would say, yeah, I know all that, but I don't care. I'm going to vote for her anyway. So I understand.
They think that was bad. I mean, I thought you haven't felt that was bad. But let me ask you this. Barack Obama is finishing up that second term, right?
Yes.
And we were assured by a whole lot of people, one of whom is sitting next to you, that if Barack Obama was to get one term, let alone two terms, that by now we should be speaking Farsi with no guns and sitting in FEMA camps.
Speaking Farsi?
Now that we've come to the
Arabic
and under Sharia law, right?
Right.
So now that we have come to the close of Barack Obama's second term, and none of that is true, do you feel, either of you, but especially you, Kent, do you feel that maybe you had a little bit of henny penny, the sky is falling, and you were overly alarmed about what Barack Obama did?
No, I don't think I was overly alarmed at all. I think I can look so far.
How many of your predictions came correct?
Well, you know what? My predictions don't have to always come true by the moment.
Not always,
but they can work themselves out. Like, for instance, just before the election, what did we see Barack Obama do? Barack Obama was interviewed by a Latina female, and she asked him, if my illegal friends here in this country vote, will they be arrested? Will anything happen to them? And he said, no. He was encouraging illegal voting, okay? He's a real sly guy. This is the kind of stuff that he did
so did that
does.
Happen? I mean, I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, I know it's true. I'm sitting here talking into the microphone right now. I talked to you about it the other day, and it is true. I saw the video. I've seen it more than once. So yeah, he was a very dangerous guy. There's no doubt about it in my mind.
But then what happened? Then he got two terms. What happened? How come we're not living in nuclear ashes right now, or we're not, locked up in FEMA camps?
Well, I think part of the answer to that, George, is because we have a Constitution. We have a United States Constitution. We still have a Republican. We had a Republican Party. That's going to look different after this.
Thank God.
But prior to this, we had a Republican Party, and so the problem with the Republican Party was that it had become establishment focused, just like the Democratic Party, and you couldn't tell them apart. This is what the voters who voted for Trump on Tuesday, this is exactly what drove them to the polls. We all realized that, you know what?
Including Democrats.
Trump won the popular vote. Donald Trump did not win most votes in this country.
Wait.
He did not win the popular vote.
That popular vote came from mostly from one state in California where all the liberals are crammed.
Vote. So let's stop acting like that now.
Well, wait, George.
Out of the last 7 presidential elections, the Republican Party has lost its popular vote. Let's establish that and know that to be true.
Okay,
so away from that baseline.
I said this before that one of the reasons Romney lost is because there's 47% of the country and 5% special interest groups that won't vote for Republicans because you guys have effectively labeled the Republican Party as racist and misogynist now and sexist and any kind of ist you can think of. And because the American, the majority of voters are so low information. At the beginning of the show, I started off by saying I didn't really pay attention to politics that much, but I did vote.
I heard you say that. I'm glad you brought that up.
That's right.
The black guy got elected. You thought you should start paying attention?
Not a black guy. When this black guy with his agenda got elected, it's all the things that he said is what scared me and made me want to pay attention.
And let me say another reason that he may have gotten elected. And I'm not even saying maybe. Now we know it's true. The mainstream media almost entirely is corrupt, and just as corrupt as these political parties. And you almost feel like you've lived in a matrix for a long time because you can't even gain useful, honest, truthful information. You have to look far and wide to figure it out. And it was very confusing. It was confusing for everybody leading right up to this election, right up to the last minute. And that's how far gone this system is.
And George, if you, I don't know if you got the link or the email where I sent the links of some of the videos we want to play later in the show.
I saw the Michael Moore video.
The Michael Moore video lays it out, I think, perfectly, and I think he was absolutely correct. When I saw that video, I thought he is exactly right. It's what I thought. But he was able to put it out there so that it could be consumed, and what he talked about is exactly what happened on Tuesday.
Well, let me leave you two with this question, and I'm sure you'll answer it at some point during the show. What does the election of Donald Trump mean to American policing and the criminal justice system?
Well, I would say part of it, if he just goes with his slogan, is law and order. There's number one. And what that means is, and the application is, we all know that this stuff that's going on right now on the streets is being instigated, paid for, and organized.
Going on in the streets, what do you mean?
I'm talking about rioting and demonstrating.
Now, let me ask
anarchists, communists, and they're all being supplied and organized by George Soros and his many organizations. We all know this for a fact now.
Let me ask you this question. How many, you guys are both on social, well, Ken, you're not on social media too much, but Bill, you are.
Yes.
On Facebook, Instagram. How many people did you see talking about revolution and this, if Trump doesn't win, it's going to be this?
A whole bunch of them. A whole bunch of them.
A whole bunch of them. So had it gone the other way around, I think you'd actually see blood in the streets tonight, instead of just people marching and throwing shit.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Well, I said about the violence. That's one of the things I'm talking about, dodging a bullet. I'll tell you why. The people that are out demonstrating right now and advocating violence and overthrow of this country and killing Whitey and everything else, I'm telling you, you've heard me say this, that when those people that they are screwing with right now and dragging out of their cars and beating in the middle of the streets because they're Trump supporters or trying to exercise their vote. Those are the people who they most like to think are your typical example of Whitey nationwide. That's not Whitey. And one day, Whitey is going to stand up because they're going to be forced to stand up. And when that group of people becomes violent, you will see something you've never seen before. Never. In modern times.
Well, you know what? That is the bullet that he dodged. And it wasn't coming from Hillary. It was coming from the other side. It was coming from some supporters that he never.
Well, there are a number of Democrats that have voted for Donald Trump from those typically blue states. They can see this too. They can see it.
Right. We're gonna talk about demographics in a little bit when we get David Skyped in.
You guys do that. And,
but George,
I'm gonna break the Gil rule, and I will be calling back later.
I do want to say this to you, George, before you go, and that is, I don't think you're correct about the bullet we dodged had Hillary been elected. I do think, however, if she had tried to implement national kind of gun control or something like that, or some other serious erosion of the Constitution, then I think, and this was my fear, that if she got in there and she really continued on this progressive agenda of open borders and multiculturalism and letting 500,000 immigrants from Syria and other places like that into the country, and then the things that would occur here in this country the way we've seen in Europe, I thought, man, if that happens, you will see a second American Revolution, and it will involve bullets.
Well, let me ask you this. How would you think that the president could repeal the Second Amendment?
He doesn't have to repeal it. All he has to do is lock everything up and do executive orders and tax and turn gunsmiths into gun manufacturers overnight to put them out of business because their license costs $2,500. He does all of this administrative stuff.
The president?
I'm sorry?
What you just said?
What?
So everything you just said is within the purview of the president?
No, but it's an agenda. It's a progressive agenda.
No, but
I didn't hear what he said.
Do it. I'm just trying to figure out. And you're saying that everything you just said is within the purview of the president to do that?
I don't believe it was in the purview of the president. As a matter of fact, those things can be challenged in court. I don't think that he has the ability to do.
But how could a President Clinton have repealed the Second Amendment or done any kind of?
I just said she doesn't have to repeal the Second Amendment.
Right.
It's just pretend that it's not there, and we're going to change things from within
through executive order
and administrative fiat.
Doable. And she could do that
through executive order, and you just saw, George, for God's sakes, in California here.
But yes or no? So the president could do that through executive order?
George, that's not a relevant question. Of course not. Everybody knows that.
I think he can.
Yes or no?
I think he can, and he can do it by just rules from the executive to whatever office is controlling that, like the ATF or any other thing. That's what he tried to do with allowing people to stay in here and waive whatever processes are set up. And it went to court, and the court said you can't do that. So that's what he does, and it takes forever to fight something like that in court because the process takes so long, and they absolutely destroy everything. Look, the Constitution says it says that this is what the government can do and everything else it can't do today. It does everything it's not supposed to do. Okay? That's how things happen.
So, George, and when you see props like what was the one here about the ammo in California that just passed?
Yeah,
they're going to
that passed here, and so now we're going to have to jump through hoops, to buy ammunition. And, Chris Rock once made a joke about, hey, I know how you stop drive-by shootings, make each bullet cost $5,000. Well, it got a good laugh, and it's kind of funny. But if you do that, you can effectively mitigate the Second Amendment by making it too difficult it's like trying to get a CCW in Los Angeles County. Right. They make the process so difficult, even though you have the right under the Constitution, practically and for all practical purposes, you cannot get one.
And tax ammunition to death. The magazines go from a high-capacity magazine down to 10 rounds. Now they've turned people in California into felons overnight. So at the end of 2017, you're supposed to turn over all of your high-capacity magazines. Now, we know that's not going to happen.
Unless you're exempt.
What's that?
Unless you're exempt. You're right.
Well, yeah, right. They're giving full-time police officers and retired police officers, which is a bunch of crap because they buy off the cops with the political organizations that support the police, and they're giving money to the politicians to make sure that their special interest group, and me being one of those retired cops, I think that's absolutely terrible. It's wrong.
Well, there's one good election result we got out of Arizona. Apparently, Chef Joe Arpaio has been run out of office. So I'm happy about that, at least. Maybe Jeff can touch on that. Anyway, I'll let you get on with the show, and I'll be monitoring you. I got my eyes on both of you.
You better go have another, what was it you were drinking?
Jack
and Coke.
Yeah, you better go have another one, brother, because you be tripping.
I know, because it's about to get deep. I can tell.
You be tripping.
All right, guys. Later.
All right, George.
See you, George.
Talk to you later. Wow. I tell George all the time, for being a cop, that guy is so far to the left, it's unbelievable to me. And, I asked him last week when we did open the show, I'm Gil Contreras, I'm George Holt, but we did that. I said, here's what I want you to say. I'm George Holt, and I'm a progressive. I just want you to say that.
He denied it?
Are you kidding?
He denied it.
I'm George Holt, and all you close-minded motherfuckers. Oh, man, it was too much. Well, listen, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, hopefully we'll have our guest, David Cruz, veteran newsman, standing by on Skype. So we will be back in just a short minute. Hey. Cisco Kid was a friend of mine. That song is part of the soundtrack of Gil's life. It is a soundtrack of my life. Anyway, I think we've got our guest on the line. Do we have our guest on the line, producer? Okay, we do have our guest on the line. David, are you there? David Cruz?
Hey, I am here and ready to serve. Gil, how are you?
David, I'm well, and thank you for helping us out in I really wanted to get your perspective as a award-winning veteran news guy of both radio and television. I'm really interested in your thoughts in general on the election, and then I have some specific questions in terms of demographics, the Latino vote, and such that I want to talk with you about. But just initially, David, what's your take on what has occurred on Tuesday? Because a lot of I'm telling you, David, a lot of my liberal friends are they're panicked. They need medication. They're running to their safe spaces. Some are calling their therapist. I mean, it's really unbelievable to me. But what's your take?
Suicide watch.
Well, that's a huge question, but I will tell you, Gil, I'm among those who are really shocked, and I guess we were. Excuse me?
No, go ahead.
And I guess I was drinking the Kool-Aid and believing the pundits in terms of what the projections were. So one of two things happened, or maybe a little of both. Maybe they miscalculated, and then again, maybe people just decided whatever they were deciding to vote, at the time that they cast their ballot, they weren't going to share with anyone. As I say, that could be a factor. It could be a little of both. But, yeah, what happened wasn't anything like what I was expecting.
Did you have a chance to see the Michael Moore video that I sent?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Okay. I want to run that if we can, Poetess. We're going to run this, and this is a video that was Michael Moore did a show in I believe it was Michigan, where he's from, and Michael Moore's take on what was going to happen on Tuesday was totally different than anything that I had heard anywhere else. And the thing that struck me is that the things that he said are exactly what I thought. I thought that there was this quiet group that were not in the polls because I've never been polled. None of my friends that I know have ever been polled, and none of us were voting for Hillary. And I thought, if there's enough of us out there, enough fed-up Americans, and they will show up at the polls on that day, I think he can beat. I think he can beat Hillary. But I didn't say it quite as eloquently as Michael Moore did. So I want to run that video now if we can. Wow. David, I know you saw the video earlier, and we just listened to it. I'll tell you, when I saw that, I was shaking my head in agreement, and that's exactly how I felt. That's exactly how I felt, that this corrupt system, which has been exposed by WikiLeaks, that these two establishment parties are so corrupt, and career politicians are so corrupt, that this thing needs to be blown up, and that's exactly what I voted for. I'm interested in your take, David.
Well, I've listened very carefully. I don't agree with everything he said. I think there are a lot of assumptions being made. Look, Gil, I don't disagree with you that the system, the way it is today in D.C., it's a club. It is a club. And the older guys there, the ones who have been there forever and a day, they run the table. And there's a lot of people who share that feeling. However, to promise people things that are beyond realistic is something that I can't support, Gil. I mean, listen, I've been in Mexico. I've seen those plants. They're now manufacturing more cars in Mexico that are destined for the U.S. than even in Japan. 10 to 15 million units a year, and we're buying them. So we can't have it both ways, Gil. Look, if we want to have cheaper and more of, and look, come on, Gil, come on. You're not going to throw money at something that you can get for less, even though we'd like to have the jobs back. But guess what? We didn't just get rid of the jobs, Gil. We got rid of the entire factories. The equipment is gone. The technology was sold overseas. Do you really believe, Gil, do you really believe one of two things? Companies are going to bring all that back, that's one, and that the American consumer will be willing to pay more because it's American-made? Maybe you're right. I want to see that happen. Because let me tell you something, Gil. My own children are making less money today than I did at their age.
Right.
And probably I will make more money in my career than they will, and even though they're well-educated. So, to your point, Gil, look, I don't disagree with you, man. I detest public corruption. And you know that I've had you on our program many times, and we talked about dishonesty in public service.
Right.
These are politicians who feed themselves at the public trough. However, can Trump really deliver? Do you believe he can really deliver? If he can, hey, you may convert me, but right now, I am skeptical, my brother.
Yeah, well, I don't think we can. I don't think we can know the answer to that. And as I watch these protests occurring all over the country, and here in Los Angeles, these protesters, mostly young people.
Well, I think that's foolish. That doesn't change anything.
Right, it doesn't change anything, but they're, my whole thing was today was I was like, why don't we just wait till he actually does something, and then
because he's threatened so much, Gil. Come on, he has threatened. He spewed threats throughout the entire campaign, and you're right. He would fart, and the cameras would be there so that we could transmit it coast to coast. You're right, and guess what? Media made a ton of money, $4.4 billion in advertising spending during this campaign season, $157,000 for every electoral vote in America.
Wow.
I mean, that's what we're talking about. This is big business. And yes, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, they all profited.
That's right.
Gil, you tell me, people are on the streets today because they were threatened, Gil, and they are terrified. Now, you're telling me that what? It was all a joke?
No,
are you telling me it was all a joke?
I'm telling you that was campaign rhetoric, and there were things that were said.
Well, let me ask you about campaign rhetoric. Let me ask you about a guy who's now going to the Oval Office who thinks it's okay to say, let's grab pussy. You tell me, do you think that's right?
I don't know if that's right or wrong.
Come on now, Gil, come on, get down to it.
David,
is it right or wrong?
I'm trying to tell you that if I repeated some of the things that I've heard when I was in the military, men talking to men, when I was in a police locker room, men talking to men, when I was in police cars, men talking to men and to female police officers, if I told you some of the things we said to each other, that would seem tame to me.
No, I thought a lot about our conversation, you and me tonight, and I hope we don't get into the circular argument. Remember what Bill did. Remember what Hillary has done. Look, I was raised in a simple way. Two wrongs don't make one right. Frankly, I don't respect the guy. I don't respect a man who has this kind of call it what you want, bravado, cheap shot talk. A guy like him, no integrity. Now, does that make him somebody who should be denied the right to run for office? Hell no. This is America. That's what it's about. But for all the Billy Bobs you talked about, I just hope when he doesn't deliver that we don't get the backlash that I would expect. When people are being promised jobs, can he deliver it? You're saying, okay, let's wait and see. All right, I guess we'll do some OJT together. How about that? You and I will both watch a guy learn the job while he's on the job. Let's see what happens.
Well, the last. Hi, David. This is Kent. How are you?
I'm all right.
The last guy we had in office, I frankly don't think ever had a job.
Well, he was an
attorney who taught Acorn how to be subversives and go out on the street and be community organizers. And there's nothing about being an organizer about community organizers.
Well, you see, we're getting to get into the circular argument. Look, I'm not here to defend Barack Obama. You have the wrong guy on the show. I'm not here to defend Barack Obama. I didn't vote for the man. I'm not here to defend him.
Okay.
What I am telling you is that in this campaign, they were both crooks. You've got Hillary, who wasn't honest with us about what she did. Then you've got a guy who won't reveal his taxes. Hell, I mean, what kind of a country is it when you're talking to people who are really making it, maybe scraping by? This guy's a gazillionaire, and he thinks he's above the law not to have to reveal, how he does his business.
That's not a law that he has to reveal his taxes.
Fine.
It's a custom.
If you want to mince my words, you can do that. But you know what I'm talking about. The ethics of a guy running for the most powerful office on the planet. Don't you want to know what kind of a man he is?
Well, I think that here. Well, I'm going to ask you. I'm going to answer that question right there. And that question, that answer is, and I've had to listen to that, and I've had to answer it to myself. I know more about Donald Trump than probably every other candidate that has run for office since I first started voting. Because he's been in the limelight for 40 years. And he doesn't
answer the question. You don't know what he's paid in taxes. And look, maybe it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter to me.
Oh, well, then maybe it doesn't matter to you. But you know what? To the people who are being led down this path to believe that he is the man for the average guy, I hope he is. I hope he is, and I hope that you prevail and that it all comes together and that this guy is going to turn the economy around. Well, I'll wait to see.
Here's something else, too, since it took me a long time to figure this out, this whole election, and it was highly entertaining and head-scratching and everything else. And at the very last, I decided for myself, it's not about Donald Trump, but it is about Donald Trump. The part that's not about Donald Trump is that the exposure of the criminality of our entire system. And it's not just the people on Capitol Hill. It's the banks, the finance, the media. There's a global scheme involved with this on top of it. So who could actually break through and get into office and survive? Who has the gravitas to try and do something about our system? The way I looked at it, we were screwed before he ever decided to run. And if he doesn't do what he's supposed to do, we're still screwed. And I'm going to be one of the first ones to say, if he doesn't do what he said he was going to do, and if he's lying about something, and he's breaking laws and everything else, I'm good for that. Yeah, he's doing it. Again, I called for George Bush's impeachment over immigration. I don't care whether he's a Republican or not. And by the way, I can't stand the Republican Party. I think it's a criminal organization, too. If I have to look at Karl Rove one more day, I'm going to throw up. Okay, the one thing that I hope comes out of this is the destruction of the criminal enterprises known as a political party in this country, because that's what it is.
You know, unfortunately, guys, and I do appreciate what you're saying. Having covered electeds for so many years, I mean, more than 4 decades, right. I can tell you, right. There's something that happens to people. I'll never forget. There was a guy who was a substitute teacher. He ran for office. He made it to Congress. The moment he got there, he started cutting side deals. They finally broke him for racketeering. He ended up doing time in the federal pen because he was trading his office favors, for jobs for his wife and family. It's disgraceful. People are tired of that, Gil. Really, they are. I understand that.
Right. David, I want to pivot. Sure. I want to pivot just a bit, sure. and I want to.
I don't know that I'm doing much good, but I'll try to answer what I can.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I do appreciate your insight, and that's why I invited you to come on and talk about this with us, because we can be one-sided, and I wanted to hear some views that would likely not even occur to me. But I want to get your take on what you think about. When Comey released that or sent the letter to that congressional committee and said that they were reopening the investigation of Hillary Clinton's emails because of the Anthony Weiner case, and that really kind of took the momentum away from her, and in the polls, even though they were mostly wrong. But even in the polls, the numbers began to get closer together.
Polls faster than they were.
And
so what's your question?
So I wonder what you thought about. Did Comey taking that action that he took on that Friday? Is that what sank Hillary Clinton? Do you think, or not?
I don't know that alone is what did it. I think people have been developing a sense of this woman for some time.
Yeah, I agree with
you. But
I
think what he did, I think the timing of his action was inappropriate. I would have liked and do believe there is a certain integrity of the vote that should be respected, and I think he meddled. I think it's unprecedented to have seen something like that. Now, having said that, let me tell you something. Let this go wherever it's going to go. If laws were broken.
Are you good for that, Dave?
Well, let me tell you something, my friend. Criminality is criminality.
Yes.
And I would have liked to have seen the same thing when the Wall Streeters, nearly broke our country.
Right.
But politicians said, let's not look back, let's look forward. Well, guess what? One of us walks into a 7-Eleven, gets away with $45, we'll get 45 years. These guys can do 45 trillion, and they get a pat on the back or a slap and told, go spend time over here in this country club little prison. Look, I know it's distasteful to be talking like this right after an election before the inaugural, but here's the deal. Criminality is criminality. I taught my kids, you don't break the law, you respect it. So what do we do? Do we teach our kids one thing, but grown-ups can do something else? Maybe it's too simplistic, but I don't care who it is. If you broke the law and you get caught with your hands in the cookie jar, you may lose your hands.
Right.
And, that would put the onus on Trump's back, too, if he brought in an attorney general who made it his business to go after corruption in general.
But here's the problem. Look. It's the way he says it. Look, having said what I just told you, the law ought to be done without bias. It ought to be done on the merit of the law itself, because that's what we believe in. We believe justice is blind. Well, but when this guy is talking in a debate, and it's almost like, I'm going to get you, you know, that's what causes people to cringe, because then it's not justice, it's revenge. So let us hope that if and when something like this comes about, and if it does, well, okay.
You know,
by the same token, gentlemen, by the same token, if this man has committed a civil crimes with his businesses, then he too needs to pay. It may not be behind bars, obviously.
Right.
But
He's in the middle of a suit right now. His trial starts at the end of this month.
Yeah, I realize that.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the answer to the question that I would give you.
So, David, speaking of people cringing, enough people didn't cringe and elected this guy. But part of the group that helped to elect Donald Trump is actually Latinos. And I want to go to that video if we can. Producer, if we can get the Latino vote video. And so I'm going to play this video real quick on Latino voters in this election, and then we'll come back and join the discussion with you, David.
All right.
How could so many experts have been so wrong?
People want to know, how were the polls so wrong?
They simply, got it wrong.
One of the big questions for Democrats tonight is what happened to the Latino vote that was supposed to bury a Trump campaign, promising much tougher immigration laws. Correspondent Steve Harrigan looks for answers tonight in Miami.
We will build the wall. Don't worry. We will build the wall.
Donald Trump called Mexicans rapists, promised to build a wall and deport undocumented immigrants. And yet 29% of Hispanics nationally voted for Trump, 2% more than voted for Mitt Romney 4 years ago, according to Fox News exit polls.
It's a new day in America. It's a great day.
I'm thrilled. I'm very happy.
I knew it was going to be a hard race, but I was excited about the policies that Trump would talk about. And I'm happy about the outcome.
I love you, Trump.
In battleground Florida, for example, younger Cubans who favor openness with the Castro regime were expected to join newly arrived Puerto Rican professionals to deliver the state's 29 electoral votes to the Democrats, a, quote, checkmate that could eliminate any path for Republican victory. But somehow in the ballot box, that failed to materialize.
When people get into the ballot box, they're going to be alone, and they're going to be alone with their partisanship, and they're going to vote their partisanship.
At the same time, President Obama was legalizing the purchase of Cuban rum and cigars.
Should not prop up the Cuban regime.
Donald Trump was meeting with veterans of the failed Bay of Pigs invasion. Trump won the Cuban vote by 13%. His courting of older Cubans who have long been seen as a disciplined conservative voting bloc paid off. While Trump lost the Florida Hispanic vote, he did so here by a much smaller margin than nationally. Keeping the Hispanic vote close enabled Trump to carry the must-win swing state by just 1.4%. The real surge in Florida came from white voters in places like the Tampa suburbs, where turnout this time around was 3 times as high as it was just 4 years ago. Brett?
Steve Harrigan in Miami. Steve, thank you.
So, David, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, they threw a lot into the story, but let me just very, very quickly hit maybe 2 or 3 bullet points.
Because I know you probably have a better finger on the pulse of Latino voters than I do, so I just really wondered what you thought about this.
Well, I'll tell you this. When a Cuban individual steps on soil here in the U.S., they're automatically granted protection. Cubans are not considered part of the greater Latino community that would understand that the history that they have had in America is not that of people who have come from Mexico, Central or South America. It's a different experience, Gil.
Okay.
And that's a reality, my brother. That's no surprise. They consider themselves somebody different.
Is that true? Even if they get on an inner tube and come across?
Oh yeah. The moment they touch soil, they have protected status in this country. Yeah.
Okay.
It's very different from someone who crosses the river from Mexico. That's a very different experience.
Why is it a different experience?
Because they get automatic protected status. The Cuban people who come here, the moment they touch U.S. soil, they cannot be deported.
So that's the difference of the experience between the groups?
Well, we could do a deeper conversation. the first people who came here from Cuba were not the poor, they were the moneyed people.
Right.
The people coming here from Mexico are not the wealthy, they're not the elite, although many now do have homes in the U.S. We're talking about people from the rural areas of Mexico. Same thing goes with Central Americans and South America. You're talking a different socioeconomic class. But be that as it may, look, Florida is an anomaly when you look at that, but I think nationally there are people who are really doing the trade-off deal, and it's economics for immigration. But do I blame them? I don't.
But when Cubans come here now, they're not money people. They're actually probably more destitute than Mexicans are.
Well, but the people who were being described in that report, and it was referred to as the veterans of the Bay of Pigs and so forth, the nucleus of the money people in Florida are still the wealthy, older money Cubans who came here in the 60s and since then. And they're very well assimilated into the state. It is like a little Cuba. And so,
you know that the Cuban vote, though, is changing, right? There are younger generations of Cubans that aren't seeing eye to eye, and they're buying into the more socialist prospect. And I have a Cuban friend who comes and goes from Florida all the time. His parents are there. He works out here in California, and we have conversations about this all the time. And there's a rift. There's a rift between them.
Well, and it's like me and my sons. I mean, it's a new generation, and people have different viewpoints. But you've asked me about the vote. I'm just responding to the question.
Got it.
Now, as far as what the trade-off might be here, Gil, I think the research is going to show that when it comes down to, I've got a lot of family in Texas, and Texas, went Trump. People are looking for work, Gil. They're looking for a better economic future, and he talked about that.
Right.
And I think that they decided, hey, we've tried 8 years of this. It hasn't given us what we wanted, so it's time for change.
Right.
Do I fault them? Well, look, to us personally, we were surprised, but I understand it. So I think we have to vote our individual circumstance, and that's what people did.
Right. And, in addition to all the people that came out for Trump, the other thing that happened that helped Trump win was, between 6 and 10 million voters didn't come out for Hillary.
That's right. Well, they weren't excited by her. I mean, let's face it. Would you want to go out and really, really put that extra push when you've got doubts in your heart of hearts about how honest is she? I mean, how do you go from being someone who's a public servant to having a net worth in excess of $100 million?
Well, we know exactly how she did it.
Well, yeah, that was a rhetorical question.
Right.
But by the same token, guys, how do you go now a Congress that has more millionaires than ever in the history of this country, and they became millionaires while they were in office?
Yep.
That's right.
Get that.
And David, this is exactly what Michael Moore, the people he was talking about, Joe Blow, Steve Blow, and all the Blows. I guess I'm Gil Blow because I believe the same thing. And I think a lot of us that voted for Trump said, hey, you know what? All those things that you just listed are true, and we have to find a way to shake this thing up.
Let's go even deeper if I can. And look, I want to respect your time. Let me just make a statement that will knock you out of your chairs.
Okay.
I live and work in California. I am a card-carrying SAG-AFTRA member, but I have to tell you, it's a racket. The labor leadership in this state is a racket. I mean, they are making money hand over fist, and you're talking about an us versus them situation? Let me tell you, well, their response is, well, we protected our own. You should have done the same. I'm sorry, I don't have the kind of mobs that you do to be able to rally that kind of wealth and power in America. So if Trump is really going to change the face of the middle class in America, we need some reforms in these things, guys. I can almost spot the guy who's on a pension with public money, because he's the guy with the new boat, the new truck, the new everything, and us working stiffs are still in our, working late into our 50s or 60s, because I guess I missed that in class. That's just what I'm saying.
Well, I agree with that, and but I think that a lot of voters were just. I think many of us, we're as fed up as the people who are actually protesting, and it was this. This distaste for the system, what it's become.
Gil, there's one word that got Trump to win. You know what that word is?
What's that?
It's anger. Anger was what was the single biggest motivator that got people out. Now, the reason for the anger may vary from voter to voter. Some maybe because of jobs, others because of public corruption and other things, but the anger reached a boiling point. And once that happens, baby, you're not going to stop it.
Right. But I was, as opposed to Trump, as the other half of the country is, I understand all the deficits that Hillary brought with her, but I was surprised, well, I wasn't surprised, but I was surprised that the Democrats were surprised that Barack Obama's coalition was not Hillary Clinton's coalition. I don't know why they thought that, because I never thought that.
That's interesting. Well, I heard something today on NPR you may find interesting, and that is that it is always tough for a candidate of the same party to follow a two-term president. Mm-hmm. And you know what?
Right.
That's part of it. But look, let's face it. It's time Hillary stepped aside and moved on with her life. And, she's been in the spotlight most of her adult life. Go on now and do something else. And I would say the same thing to these old fogies in D.C. who are, they've been there so long they stink.
Yeah. Right. That's right.
Bring them on home, live under the laws you pass. But, hey, it gets cozy and you're treated like you're royalty when you're in D.C.
I think we all hope for the same thing. Just some people are pissed off about how Trump got there. So we'll see how it is.
Well, I will close with this, guys. Look, my daddy used to say you can disagree, but you don't have to be rude.
Right.
Whether it's rudeness through dishonesty or rudeness through rhetoric that's designed to get people provoked, I just didn't appreciate some of the nastiness. Okay, but
right.
But look, we're past that. Gil, I congratulate you. I think you guys are doing a great job. Keep the conversation going. We're going to have to do more of this in years to come. We need to do more of it.
Thank you. That's David Cruz, veteran newsman, award-winning news guy from television and radio here locally and nationally. David, thanks for being on the show tonight. I really appreciate it.
You bet, guys. Good night.
Good night. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Kent and I are going to talk about some of the propositions that passed here in California, and then we're going to wrap it up. So we'll be back in a second. And we're back. Welcome to Ride Along Radio. Just finished up our discussion with veteran news guy and my friend and mentor, David Cruz. We're so lucky to have guys like that we can, just tap into, and they readily come on the show with us. So I want to thank David for coming on with us tonight. Just on social media, I just want to read. This is from Ed in Colorado. He left a message, and it says, here's a flashback for you. I remember 4 and 8 years ago when if you didn't vote for Obama, you were labeled a racist. I believe the same holds true now. Therefore, if you didn't vote for Trump, based on those standards, does not make you a sexist. I'm just saying that I'm not going to change a thing. Trump is your president. Get over it already, and you can't have it both ways. So I guess he's kind of talking about the backlash and some of these protests that are occurring. I was stuck in traffic coming over here today. I actually thought I was going to be late. And I was thinking to myself, there better not be a protest somewhere.
You have to run them over?
with these, these young kids, the very demographic that didn't show up. Here's the interesting thing to me. The very demographic that failed to show up for Hillary Clinton to put her over the top and are now protesting the election of Donald Trump are now out there on the freeway shutting traffic down because they're protesting the election of Trump.
Maybe they've been convicted and lost the right to vote.
It blows my mind, because if the blacks had shown up, if Latinos had shown up, if women had shown up the way they believed that they were going to, if that had occurred, if Obama's coalition had shown up for her the way they showed up for Barack Obama, we wouldn't have seen Donald Trump at the White House today.
Yeah, the numbers of people that voted, he got twice as many black votes as Romney did as well. He's 67% of white males voted for him for Trump, and 53% of white females. So some of the numbers that they were running, and I think a lot of people believe that the polling, I'll use the word rigged. They were disproportionately counting Democrats over Republicans.
They sound like Bernie Sanders.
And they weren't doing, carrying on with the formulas of how many, registered Republicans and Democrats were in the area. So not only that, but polling was changing from one day to the next. One day, in Investors Business Daily had him up by 1 or 2, and the next day he was down by 1 or 3. And the same with the USC LA Times. It had them up by 4.5 one day. The next day, the LA Times released the electoral map. This is our final pick, and Hillary was going to win by a landslide.
Yeah.
And I went, wait a minute, what in the hell? And the group of friends are going, what do you think? And I said, and I don't know, because I went to a political rally for the first time in my life in Vegas, and I went and saw Trump. That was the most unbelievable experience I've ever had. And
what do you mean unbelievable?
Well, just being there and seeing the energy and how pissed off people were and supportive they were, and how up-to-date they were on the information coming out in the media about Hillary. When you ask Hillary supporters, they have no clue half the time what is going on with her. She was a crime boss, for goodness sakes. And they would look at you with a deer in the headlights look. And I would say, I don't know. It's the psychological mind screw job that was being done by the media, because we know that they were in the tank, makes it very difficult beyond the groundswell and people networking and talking to each other, saying that Trump all over the nation, Trump signs everywhere, Hillary signs nowhere. And I'm thinking, at the last minute, we were watching the debates. We started right around 4 o'clock, and I was texting with friends. And I said, okay, I'm going to go out on a limb here. Here's my call. Trump wins, and he wins handily. And my own friends were going, oh, you're full of it. Everybody thought at the last minute that he was going to lose because of what was coming out in the polls.
Right.
And it was the most dramatic thing I've ever seen on television. This whole cycle for the last 2 years has been dramatic and unbelievable and exciting. And I knew when it was over, it was going to be a huge letdown for me, because it was the most dramatic thing I think I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
And that night, watching it was like, my God, I'm calling people that have never watched an election night in their entire life. Did you see that? And they're going, oh my God, was that exciting or what?
Yeah. It's interesting about the rallies he was holding, in those final days. I mean, Trump was just everywhere.
Yes.
And I was, I was surprised at the numbers, just the number of people who were showing up.
And couldn't even get in.
And in the mainstream media, the word was, well, the number of people who show up for a rally
is irrelevant.
Yeah.
Look what happened to Bernie Sanders. But we didn't at the time realize that the DNC had already put the screws to Bernie and made sure that he wasn't going to win.
Right. But I think that Bernie's rallies, the people who were showing up for Bernie Sanders, they were so large that if the DNC hadn't screwed him by trying to coordinate Hillary, if that guy had run against Trump, we'd be talking about President Bernie Sanders today.
Maybe.
That's right. And so, but here's my theory on the media, and I there's no way to prove it, because nobody will. There's no way I can get the information. But it was interesting during the primary campaigns, the media, the CNNs, the Foxes, and MSNBC so much, but they were all focused on Trump, and they really wanted to see Trump beat the establishment candidates.
The world.
They wanted to see that because, and here's my theory, the reason they wanted to see that is because they thought, if we can help him win the primary, and they're stupid enough to make him the
candidate.
There's a different word, but whatever. But I'll use candidate. If we can get him to be the candidate, the nominee. That's what I was looking for. If we can make him the nominee in the general election, we'll just flip right on him, and we'll use all this Oppo research, and we'll just bury him, and Hillary will just slide right in.
Right.
And I believe that's what they thought would happen. That's why they did what they did. Not only did they make all the money that David Cruz talked about, but they were laughing all the way. If you watch CNN, in their panels, they're this is the thing about progressives. They are so smug. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? They're so smug, and they toss their heads. And they're just dismissive.
Right. They think they're very bright.
Yeah, they're smarter than everybody in the room. Right. And I have a sister who's like that, the Monday morning quarterback. And she just, oh, Gil, you're so silly. I'm part of the education Taliban, so I know better than you. So, okay, well, that's why I call it the education Taliban.
That's a good name.
Yeah. So So the Education Taliban, though, needed medication on Tuesday night.
Oh, yeah.
Tuesday night and Wednesday morning.
Little couch time. It was a big couch.
I had to go easy on her, though. I had to go easy on her on social media because I could tell by the tone of what she was writing that it was just, it's too much.
Touch and go.
It's too much for them. They can't fathom. It was like watching Rachel Maddow break down on TV, watching, the night of the election. Here I am. I'm at home, right? And I'm on my computer and I'm doing payroll for my little company. And, Patricia's at the kitchen table. I'm, at the computer and I have CNN on in the background. And, so I'm working, I'm listening. And then I get a text from you and it says, are you watching this yet? And I was like, what? And I think I called you. I said, well, what's happening? I said, why? I just got
back from walking my dog. And I'm like, you need to catch up.
I'm walking the dogs. I got to get on the computer. But yeah, I'll start paying attention. So after I got off with you, I turned on CNN. I get on the computer. I start doing my work. I'm listening, right? And then suddenly, and it wasn't so sudden. It was probably over the course of about an hour. The tone of the voices began to change.
Right.
And suddenly on CNN, they got very serious. And I looked over because, we have a fan for the dogs. So the fan's, oscillating. So I'm trying to look around the fan at the TV. And I can see Wolf Blitzer. And Wolf Blitzer's...
So go to that other map. Go to the other one over there. What does that mean?
And then he would end his little segment. He would say, it's not over yet. In the little staccato way that he does.
And when Pennsylvania popped up and suddenly Hillary jumped ahead, and all of a sudden Wolf Blitzer says to, I can't remember, that Jake Tapper and the other female that was there with him, and he says, well, she's up now. So this is pretty good news. You think they're breathing easier? And all of a sudden, Jake Tapper and this female look at each other, and he turns around and Jake Tapper says, I don't think so.
Well, Jake Tapper has turned out to be one of the more honest ones over there at CNN.
Well, and they were on their best behavior because of all the revelations as well. And I watched Fox News. They were more fair than Fox News was in their coverage.
Yeah.
I was telling everybody, turn it on CNN because look at the job they're doing.
Yeah,
not that I trust them.
And so finally, I just stopped working. And I went to go sit on a couch, and I'm watching this, and here's Dana Bash, Gloria Borger, these flippant, I know more than everybody else, media elites, and there they are with long faces.
Yes.
They look like John Kerry, for God's sakes. They all got long faces, and they're looking at the board, and John King is doing his thing. Well, we got this, if you add this in, and then
what's the Marxist name? The avowed Marxist that's on there, and he worked for
Van Jones.
Van Jones.
And so that was what
Love it.
I was typing, and then suddenly I started, to put shit on Facebook, and I said, I wonder where Van Jones is hiding, because he wasn't even on camera.
He got knocked out of his chair by the white lash. Isn't he the one that made that up?
Well, he came later when he came back on, with his sad face and talking about this white lash and. Totally dismissing the Latinos and the females and the blacks who actually also voted for Trump. It wasn't a quote white lash close quote, and it's just trying to push this race thing.
This twisted mentality like I've never seen. I don't even have words for it. It's hard for me to even discuss it because it's unreal.
And here's the thing. When Joe Blow, Steve Blow, Gil Blow, Kent Blow, when we hear phony balonies on TV say things like, well, I just got a call from a friend of mine, should we leave the country? What do I tell my daughter tomorrow? But I wanted to say, brother, please, with that nonsense. What do you tell your daughter?
I'll be picking you up with the bus.
There was some
in a half an hour.
Some New York Times columnist wrote a letter to his daughter. But please, why are you writing a letter to your daughter? Why don't you just go talk to her, for God's sake? She shouldn't be in the same place. Right.
She's in the next room.
Really just blew my mind. And the thing that I enjoyed the most, and David would probably strongly disagree with me on this, but the thing that I enjoyed the most was watching all of these flippant, arrogant media elites melt down right on TV, right in front of me. I loved it.
And I've been keeping a list while this election has been going on and saving videos and everything. When I have the time to call in and email them or any other communication that I can have with them, about you need to go find another job now. Nobody trusts you. Okay, your entire channel is not trusted. So go away.
Yeah, this whole polling nonsense and the formulas they use, and you know, it's all blown up. And this is why people voted for Trump, because and Michael Moore was absolutely right. We want to throw a freaking Molotov cocktail, and people laughed at me. George was one of them, for God's sakes. Holt. They laughed at me when I said what you could see is America's Brexit. Mm-hmm. That's us saying we're exiting this corrupt political system because both parties have become corrupt. Neither one of them care about us, and we're sick and tired. We're fed up, and we're out.
And now watch this, okay? Brexit and our exit, okay? So now the British are not allowed to leave the European Union until their parliament votes on whether they can leave or not. So says their courts. Mm-hmm. Did you know that?
No.
Okay. Now, if you think that this is over with Donald Trump being voted into office and he's going to have a cooperative Congress, and by that cooperative Congress, I mean the Republicans, you're wrong. They are not done fighting with this. They're going to try to pull something out of their rear end. I don't know what it's going to be, but they're plotting in the background right now, and that's exactly what's happening in Britain. It is not over simply because he was voted in. Right. It's not over until it's over.
That's right, and we can't just relax now and say, "Oh, okay, good."
It just started.
It's only beginning, and you're seeing it. You're seeing it overseas. You're seeing it in France. You're seeing it. You're seeing it in Germany. You're seeing people rising up,
right?
You know, and saying, "Hey, we've had enough of this globalist, multicultural experiment that you're trying to do with us. This open border, anybody can come in,
wiping out our nationalism."
Yeah, we're just done with that. Yeah. So before we get out of here, I do want to talk about a couple other local initiatives that passed, and one of them was Proposition 57. Now, Proposition 57 here in California said that nonviolent felons would be considered for parole, and factors like good behavior, education could be used for sentence credit. And 63.6% of Californians voted in favor of this, which now means that a whole bunch of violent felonies have now been reduced, and there's about 16,000 state prison inmates who are going to be releasing back into California. We had AB 109, which was an early release program, and then the voters of California, who never saw a tax they don't like and never saw anything relating to criminals that they didn't like, voted for Prop 47, which made a whole bunch of felonies, narcotics felonies, misdemeanors, theft, misdemeanors. It dropped it all. So career criminals just said, "Oh, you've got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me." And so now Proposition 57 has passed. And so what's going to happen now is felons convicted of nonviolent crimes, which have been declassified, felons convicted of nonviolent crimes can be considered for parole after serving the full sentence for their primary offense. Also, decisions on whether to try young defendants as children or adults will be made in juvenile court and not by prosecutors.
Well, and I frankly think that in every prison, if you went through there and you got a hold of the people that actually know who the prisoners are and have known them for years in there, and that means the custody staff, and you'll find people that really don't belong in prison, okay? Mm-hmm. And you can actually weed them out without this ballot measure.
Exactly.
Okay. Now,
the CDC could do it if they wanted to.
Sure. And a federal court has told them to start emptying out their prisons. Some 26,000 prisoners that they were going to have to release. Instead, they started shipping them to other states, right? Mm-hmm. Filling up their beds. Now, you remember strike three.
3 strikes.
Okay, 3 strikes. So how long has that been around, and how long has it taken us to get a new generation of unaware young people who will vote for this kind of crap because in their mind is, we need to do good. They'll vote for this.
Well, the thing about liberals is they're all well-intentioned.
Right.
They have great intentions, And I remember I was driving by a church one day, and on the church, the little sign they have outside that says, service on this day or whatever, kamai or whatever. The little saying that the church had on it said, "Good intentions never saved a soul." And so, what that means is that while you're well-intentioned and you want to, quote, make a difference, close quote, you can't put measures like this and pass them and then, without considering or even thinking about the unintended consequences that then Joe Blow, Steve Blow, Gil Blow have to deal with.
But that means more crimes and more homicides and other things.
More theft. I mean, it's just incredible to me. And the other thing that passed that is of interest to me as a narcotics detection canine handler is Proposition 64, where the California electorate has decided that it's going to be legal to smoke marijuana recreationally in the state. And
so you're out of business.
Well, we're not out of business because the federal government still considers it a Schedule I narcotic. So for public housing, Section 8 housing, you can't have it on those properties, currently, even if you have a 215 card. So, and in public places. So if you go to like a rave or a public event or something, just because it's legal to smoke is not going to be legal to smoke out in public or anywhere that you want to in your car while you're driving.
So you're still in business.
So we're still in business.
Right.
We're in business. That's what we are. We in business. Now we had to expand to bombs. I was just going to say that we had to expand to bombs, but part of the unintended consequences that I see with Prop 64 passing, and we've already seen it to some degree with 215, and that is, as people are, police departments are going to have one hell of a time in California trying to find a freaking police candidate who doesn't smoke weed.
Well, they've had to change those rules from time to time depending upon how many people they've needed to hire. Like, for instance, it used to be if you smoke pot more than 3 times, how many years ago, then you were disqualified, right? Yeah. Now it was, did you deal? Were you a dealer, and did you deal last week?
Yeah. Was it in the last 6 months? I think marijuana is a year, and I think the harder drugs, what's that? I'm thinking of crack, cocaine, and the other one, meth. That's like 2 years. Right. So, you haven't done it, you did it, but it was 2 years ago. Okay.
Yeah, not a problem.
But how's your credit?
Yeah. Yes, do you have a drinking problem?
So, how's your credit? You could be a pothead, and we'll make you a cop. But if you have bad credit and you're clean and you were in the military, but your credit got a little shaky for whatever the reason is.
How many tickets do you have?
Yeah.
Did that go to warrant?
We're not going to be able to take you. So that's just crazy to me. And this is the state that we live in.
Now, how about the price of prescription medication? And it won't be anything greater than what the VA pays for or less. And it was written without any mechanisms to keep the drug companies from either selling those drugs at all or just raising their prices.
Yeah,
it was the stupidest thing I've ever read.
California shot that one down. They shot that one down. There's still a death penalty in California. The people said it. We still have to, be able to exercise that.
Maybe a little scared of these people coming out of a prison, so just in case, we're going to keep the death penalty.
But the one that was the other one that was interesting to me, along with the Prop 57 and 64 was, let me see if I can find it here real quick. The one about condoms. I think it's Prop 60. Should they make?
There's price controls on condoms now.
No, there's not price controls, but whether we should force, whether it should be enforceable by law that people involved in the pornography business that they must use condoms.
Yeah, they've tried this before.
California said, no, that's okay. Yeah. We don't like the way it looks on camera. So
HIVs are
when we're smoking weed, and watching porn, we don't want to see no condom in there. We want to see the real deal. So. Well, anywho, we're out of time here. Man, the time just goes by so fast. I want to thank David Cruz for joining us tonight and offering his perspective on the elections. I want to thank Kent Lee for coming in and helping out here in studio with me. It was a lot of fun to have you here. I hope you'll make some more appearances.
Good to be here. I don't know about that.
In the future. Thanks to George Holt, who's in Florida, making all that long money while I sit here. But that's kudo. Thanks for letting me sit in your chair and do the show tonight. And the last thing I want to say before we go is thank you to you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for calling in. Thank you for attacking me. I love it. I really have very thin skin, so you're not going to hurt my feelings. Trust me on that one. And if you voted for Donald Trump, I owe you a debt of gratitude because we just dodged a bullet, America, and you can be thankful for that.
Go Trump.
I'm Gil Contreras. This has been Ride Along Radio. We'll see you next week.